Welcome to this second session of our workshop. The first presentation will be from Fabio Farina from GAR, and he will present us the system that was developed to monitor latency and jitter for the LoLA sub-project. So Fabio, please.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Paul. Let me show my screen. You should see my slides now, and let me know if you can see full screen slides.
Yes, excellent, perfect.
Perfect, fine. So good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Fabio Farina from GAR, and I'm a software architect. I'm here on behalf of W6T1 team, and today I will give you a brief recap of why we developed Timemap. This is the way we call the latency and jitter monitoring tool, and the status of the development. As you probably know, we spend more time in VC than anywhere else in the last year. So being sure that latency and jitter are constrained is a must-have today for all of us. And when we get higher with the requirements of bandwidth and quality, overall quality in real-time video and audio services, just like in the case of LoLA, the higher the jitter, the higher the latency, the higher the impact on the quality of service. And the most relevant part in handling with services like LoLA is the complexity of debugging things. LoLA itself has a very efficient end-to-end tool to assess that things flow as expected. But when something does not work as expected, understanding what's going on gets really tricky, gets really complex. So we needed something more than just an end-to-end active monitoring tool. We needed something that keeps track of how latency and jitter behave all the time and all over the GÉANT backbone as a first step. So this is why we developed Timemap. Timemap is a tool that follows the well-known extract, transform, and load pattern. We decided to implement it as a microservice architecture because we wanted small and light modules that implement the main three features needed by Timemap. Getting the data from the devices, transform and filter those data, and save them in a time series database. And then we needed also, of course, visualization tools to understand what's going on and then analyze the observation. One thing that I want to highlight is that the goal of Timemap is not developing new technologies. Timemap is a tool that must provide information, knowledge, and awareness of how the network is behaving with respect to metrics that are not, let me say, the standard one, as could be the capacity. And this is why we decided to go for a microservice architecture, because we wanted to have the freedom to change building blocks as needed, keeping the approach and the way of how we get insight from the data. So the first implementation was based on Docker containers, and we inherited from other teams some tiny Python scripts that took care of querying Juniper routers, in particular RPM subsystem, to get latency and jitter through SNP. We at first decided to go with Elasticsearch as time series database, and to use, even though Elasticsearch itself is something different, slightly different than the pure time series database, and then to use Kibana. We decided to go with these tools because these were the most familiar to the people that implemented the tool. And we got a quite good prototype that collected data for about 6 or 7 months. But at a certain point, we realized that our implementation choices were not scalable and not sustainable on the long term. I mean, Elasticsearch, once you get more and more data, tends to become, let me say, a bit cumbersome, because you need many resources, you need a cluster of nodes to run it safely. And also, moreover, in general, Kibana does not provide the authentication and authorization levels that we wanted to ensure with the services. So, in the last few weeks, we decided to refactor the service from scratch. We kept the architecture, but we decided to move from the ELK stack to the so-called thick stack. So the probes have been implemented relying on Telegraph, the standard tool for telemetry. And we shrank down the original Python script to a couple of really very tiny Python wrappers that just take the output from SNP tools or TWPing tools, parse the output as JSON formats, and then it's up to Telegraph to send this data to an influx version 2 database. On top of that database, as usual, I would say, we placed Grafana. And on top of Grafana, as in many other cases shown this afternoon, we decided to place a thin layer running HTML pages to show the web map topology, few JavaScript to have a nice look and feel graph navigation tool, and then the needed authentication part to let the service be exposed as service provider to GÉANT. So today, what's the status? The Timemap status in version 1 is considered production ready. We collect latency and jitter from all the GÉANT backbone routers using RPM and SNMP. We also started in the last couple of months, I would say, getting data through TWMP from perfSONAR nodes. Right now we have one perfSONAR machine at GISC, and we sample data using TWPing, as I've shown in the previous slide, from a subset of the GÉANT backbone routers. And all the data are sampled with a frequency of 5 minutes. The plus about our approach is that everything is based on Docker plus Docker Compose, and the probes are just plain Telegraph packages installed on the systems under test. So we decided to go through a minimalist approach, I would say. Our goal is to have almost zero custom code, because, as I said, our focus is on the behavior of the network, not on the code. But the choice of the tool provided us some interesting benefits, also in terms of security. As I said, we are at GÉANT federated, and flexibility, because both Grafana and Influx in the last version have a quite rich role-based authorization, and also support multi-tenancy. So collecting different sources from different NRENs, for example, in the same data lake, and mix and matching data for performing analysis, cross-correlation, and things like that is now really easy and secure, because everything is mediated by authorization tokens that can constrain read and write authorization in a quite granular way. I will show you in a brief some I would say screenshot, but it's a live demo. The service is here, is available. I invite you to log in and to play with it. And our next steps are, first of all, we are preparing the documentation with the user guide, admin guide, and customization guide, because GÉANT Ops decided to adopt the tool because they consider it mature enough to be production ready. So they will use it to keep track of latency and monitoring as an official tool, let me say. Of course, together with the documentation, we will release the few files that build up the system. And of course, we are really interested, as the tool is really, really simple, in talking to other NREs that are interested in implementing something similar in their backbone. So my presentation is brief and it's over. I would change a bit the screen sharing to show you how Timemap looks like. So I'm going to reload the page. Okay, I'm already logged in. This is
Fabio,
yes?
we see just the PowerPoint, so you should
okay, probably let me change. Sorry, I thought I was sharing my whole screen.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so you should see this is the landing page. The landing page essentially is a graph that acts as an index for all the links. And if you click with the right button on a link or on a node, you get the context menu. So for example, if you want to see jitter standard deviation information, you select that link and the specific Grafana view pops up with the right variables. That's all. Let me stop my share. So
thank you, Fabio. Thank you for this presentation and the brief demo of the system. Okay, so if there are any questions, we will leave this for the end. I will have some questions, but I will leave this for the discussion that we will have at the end of this second session. I will now ask our second speaker. This is Antoine Delvaux from MyTask to present us the latest news in perfSONAR, where some changes are expected in future releases of the software. So Antoine, please share your screen. Okay, good, we see it. The floor is yours.
All right, yeah, okay, so hello everyone. So this is a brief presentation about perfSONAR and where we currently stand this year and what has been happening lately and what you can expect from perfSONAR in the coming month. So if we look first at the deployment of perfSONAR, the public deployment, we can see that we have a stabilization of perfSONAR deployments around the world with a bit more than 2,000 public deployments in different networks, mostly research and education networks, but also some commercial providers as well. This map and this count of 2,000 nodes is only the public one, because we also know that perfSONAR is used inside some networks, but in a private way and only monitoring the network performance privately in some networks. So that doesn't show all the perfSONAR deployments around the world, but shows all the deployments or all the measurement points that you can use as a target for your perfSONAR measurements. And we can have a closer look at the deployments in Europe, and we can see that now with these 2,000 deployments, and I think that's about a quarter of that's in Europe. It's geographically well dispersed and in nearly all the countries around Europe, and also more countries around the world as well. So now let's have a look at what has changed in the software recently in the past 2 years, and where we're heading to as we develop new version of the software. So maybe one thing to note as well is that just recently, at the beginning of this year, we had a sixth partner joining the perfSONAR collaboration. So the perfSONAR collaboration is all the organization that are developing perfSONAR, that are contributing some manpower to develop perfSONAR. So now on top of the four American partner and GÉANT, we have RNP, which is the research and education network from Brazil that joins the software development. So having a look at one of not the latest version, but the one before that. So the 4.2 release that was released initially in 2019, and then some updates in 2020. The main new features that I want to mention here is the what we call the PWA, the psconfig web administration, which is a new graphical user interface that helps you manage your perfSONAR deployment and the set of measurements that happens between them. So that's usually what you deploy alongside your perfSONAR deployment, and that's a tool that can be used by a group of organizations that are working together to build a network of measurements between the different organizations. So I invite you to try that tool if you have not. It's quite useful and yeah, allows you to schedule nearly all the tests that are available on the CLI with perfSONAR. This version of 4.2 of perfSONAR also brought some new measurement types that might be useful to some of you or some use cases, and these are in two different categories, but are mostly application level measurements. So not only throughput and latency measurements or packet loss measurements that we're doing at layer 3 and layer 4, but we also do some DNS and HTTP response time measurements, and also some disk-to-disk measurements that can be useful to show how your application might behave in your network, and how the performance of your network might affect the performance of these applications. And one also area of work that we've been working on in the past years is providing you with Ansible roles and an example playbook for Ansible to deploy and manage a setup of perfSONAR nodes in your network, and being able to administrate the configuration of these nodes easily through Ansible. So we hope that with this we can enable some network engineers, some system administrators to more easily manage a set of perfSONAR hosts and deploy and upgrade and distribute the configuration of these nodes. So that was the previous version of the perfSONAR, and our current version is the 4.3 series that we initially released at the end of last year, and we just released a patch, a security fix update last week, actually this month. But this release didn't really bring big new features, but was mostly a stabilization and some performance improvement, and working on the technical debt that we build in the software development projects. Generally stabilizing the perfSONAR release. We also brought support for Debian 10, and that with that I can mention that currently perfSONAR can run on CentOS 7, on Debian 9, on Debian 10, on Ubuntu 16 and Ubuntu 18, and the default release of the release for which we provide an ISO image for easy installation is CentOS 7, but that's something that will probably change in the future because as you probably know, Red Hat and its parent company have decided to change the release cycle of CentOS, and that has some implication for us. This version of perfSONAR also brought 2 new pscheduler plugins that allow you to do some new kind of measurements. One that benchmark the S3 network storage protocol, so that you can see, you can measure, for example, the different performance you can get from different cloud provider providing this S3 storage, and also a new throughput plugin with a tool called jitter developed by Microsoft, so that when you do a throughput test with perfSONAR, you can choose between either using iPerf version 3 is the default one, but you can also use iPerf version 2. You can use a new TCP, and now you can also use jitter. And these tools have different characteristics and behaves differently depending on the speed of the network, depending on the latency of the network, depending on the bandwidth of the links that are measured. So in some situations, it might be useful to have jitter used instead of iPerf 3, for example. And now if we look at what we are currently working at and what you can expect from perfSONAR in the coming month, we're currently working on both maintaining the version 4 of perfSONAR with some small new features and improvements coming along, mostly related to pscheduler, and bringing in support for Ubuntu 20. But only for the test point deployment of perfSONAR, so not for the full toolkit with the full user interface, because we actually have one main component that we want to change in the near future. It's the backend storage of perfSONAR. Up to now, the backend storage for perfSONAR measurements has been SMOND, which is a middleware that relies on a Cassandra database for the storage. But managing Cassandra and upgrading it and providing support for it has been becoming more difficult for us in the past, and we want to move away from that. We also see as a general trend that a lot of application, and mostly network management and network monitoring application, are using Elasticsearch as a backend, and so we also want to move the default backend of perfSONAR to Elasticsearch. It was already possible, and it's already possible now to send your perfSONAR measurements to Elasticsearch, but it's not the default behavior, and you have to configure it to be that way. And by moving to this new backend, we hope and we intend to open the visualization possibilities that you will have to display perfSONAR data. And we will provide perfSONAR users with a pre-baked Grafana dashboard that hopefully will be useful and will be customizable, so that you can integrate your perfSONAR data with data coming from other monitoring tools. And as we've seen with the different presentation today, we see it's a very popular and common tools being used, even if it has some limitations like Mauro explained us. So we hope that by moving to that, we will enable you, our users, to more easily correlate the performance change that you can see on links networks with other network events and measurements and monitoring data that you can already see and that you can already have on your network. And to finish this presentation, just a few words about perfSONAR, and by saying that perfSONAR, it's also a community of users where we welcome you to participate in and to be part of. And for that, we as perfSONAR developer and work package 6 task 3 in the GÉANT project, invite you to participate to the second European perfSONAR user workshops that will happen next month on the 14th and 15th of April. It will be a workshop similar to this one, but lasting 2 days. We scheduled it during the European afternoon time, so that people from the United States or the America can also participate, even if it's the European users workshop. And the 2 days will be each day will be a bit different, with the first day focusing more on user experience and use cases of perfSONAR deployments and usage. And the second day presenting the new features, latest developments, and what's happening on the development side of perfSONAR. So we invite you to join us and to also provide your input, what you would like to see from perfSONAR in the future, what kind of improvement you'll be interested to see, and to share your use case, or to see how others are using perfSONAR in Europe, but also around the world. So if you're interested, please get in touch with us. And I put here some pointers, some links to the general perfSONAR project collaboration, the users list where you're invited to subscribe and to participate. And perfSONAR in the GÉANT project is managed within work package 6 tasks 3, and we do the part of the software development, but we also offer a consultancy and expertise service where we can help you build and deploy your perfSONAR measurement point in your network. So that ends my presentation, and welcome any question later today in the workshop.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you very much for the presentation. The penultimate presentation today is again about a system which is based on perfSONAR. So Szymon Trocha from PSNC will present us PNP service, which is being installed in almost all the countries in Europe and almost all the
I hope you can see the screen.
Yes, Szymon, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, good. Thank you, Pavle. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Szymon Trocha of PSNC, in the GÉANT project, working and responsible for the PMP service. And I'm going to describe you the current status, what the service is for those of you who may not know, and show some ideas for future development. I also seek for the ideas from you as a community. So let me start maybe with pointing out that PMP is the live GÉANT service. So if you go to the GÉANT portal and look into the list of services under the connectivity and network management, you will clearly see performance management platform, which stands for PMP. So this is a part of a stable services portfolio of GÉANT. And you can also see that that nicely fits into the other services mentioned here. So perfSONAR as a software is also there, and PMP obviously uses that. And NMAS is also there, and we are also, let's say, a client of NMAS with our central part. So all of this is nicely linked. So we are mature enough. In fact, we started somewhere in 2016 with an idea of having small nodes, means small devices, a size of like Intel NUC or bricks, which is about 10 centimeters wide and depth, with known capabilities, which we can easily distribute through our partners, through NRENs, and they can have the perfSONAR software installed. What's interesting is that the service consists of those hardware nodes which already have the pre-installed perfSONAR software and pre-configured. So what the users are given is a box with already software which is capable of running and easily joining the mesh of measurements and have all the necessary components which we need to have. So that's first, and that also implies that in case somebody else wants to use that model, we can easily provide all the guidelines and even images of this software so that they can easily deploy instances in their own domain. So nodes are one piece of the service, and the other are the central components that manage the platform elements, that collects the data, stores data, and allow users to browse through the performance measurements. As I said, we operate that as a task, and all of this infrastructure is maintained by the GÉANT project. We, in fact, not only using these small nodes because they are not there by themselves, but we also use the GÉANT NPs, which are the measurement points in the GÉANT core network, and they have the perfSONAR software instances running there. And we create a partial mesh, which means that the perfSONAR nodes from PMP are running tests towards a selected set of GÉANT measurement points, and therefore we have a nice overview of network performance parameters from the GÉANT core, but we also run other set of services. We basically use most of the current types of tests coming from perfSONAR, as Antoine mentioned. So we obviously start with throughput and running those tests, let's say 4 times a day to those destinations. Then comes the latency and packet loss with the OAMP and round trip type 2, of course. But with the latest addition last year of the new types of tests, we also started to measure the HTTP request time and DNS query time, which allows us to see how the selected websites behave. So the previous 4 we measured to the GÉANT measurement points, but those HTTP and DNS query time we measure to a selected websites, like those which may have some importance for the community, like the GÉANT website, RIPE website, or google.com website. So we measure those, we run those tests regularly, and all the data is then coming to the central server. What's important in the service are these central components, and if you look at this picture here, you may also see it as a kind of pattern when you want to deploy perfSONAR, similar one, or based on the other hardware in your own domain, because this would be kind of best guidelines on how to deploy or how to run the service. So you have those central server, which hosts the measurement results, and it also hosts the Ansible for automation. Then we have this graphical part where we have the measurements dashboard to visualize the test results, which is, by the way, publicly available. So not only the service participants are able to see that, but anybody, in fact, in the GÉANT community and in the world is able to access the data. Then goes the infrastructure monitoring. We could not operate properly the service without the proper monitoring. So that's why we are using the NMAS infrastructure in order to build the Grafana and use Prometheus to collect some basic statistics about each of the node and the central measurement archive, so that we know whether there is some memory limitations or CPU limitations, or the simplest one is this disk storage is limited. And then we are, of course, alerted when something goes wrong, and we can react as an operation team. It should not be easy to operate such a extensive deployment without automation in place. So as Antoine mentioned in his part, perfSONAR is already using Ansible to make the deployment even easier, but we also use Ansible to configure and to manage the nodes. Like to add new pieces of the mesh configuration or add some pieces of the user configuration of the nodes. So then makes all these tasks much more easier for the operation team, which is in fact the last part of the components and comes from the task VR. The team is maintaining all the central parts. It is observing all the monitoring, reacts to any issues, and supports the deployment in terms of not only extending the footprint, but also helping the user with all the issues they encounter, or even as part of the consultancy service to help them deploy perfSONAR in their own domains as a kind of, let's say, extension to what currently exists. And well, we disseminate the information during different events. So the central dashboard, here is the URL you might go into and see there are those well-known MAD-dash matrices, so the two-dimensional graphs where you can see the list of the PMP nodes in the NRNs, and then you have the GÉANT MPs. That's for the tests like throughput or delay and packet loss. And for DNS and HTTP, you again have the list of nodes and those 4 websites which we are measuring to. And of course, the colors are reflecting the current status of the measurements or the nodes, depending how the thresholds are set. And if you go into details and click on any of these rectangles, you go to the graphs, the detailed graphs, the same graphs, in fact, as you can see on the toolkit. And then you can go through the history of measurements and browse through them to go into more details. Couple of things to show why do we do that, and how the service is flexible, and what was the idea behind. So of course, these tests and the set of metrics can help well, to show the researchers that they can get the similar level of performance through different points of the GÉANT network and from the NRNs to the GÉANT core. But that's also an example of providing an easy way to set up new perfSONAR nodes on small devices. So basically through the way we do that, so we make an image, we pre-configure that. It's not fully tied to the hardware. You may use it on the other types of hardware. So that's somehow make the deployment more easy, and it's a new way of deployment of the software. As a deployment such an extensive in size, it may also become some example of used for experimentation, and the following presentation will in fact be based on such an assumption, how we can get more out of that. If you are thinking about creating a training platform for some of your users, you may also want to deploy such a set of small devices within a laboratory or during a training even, and it's easy to set up, especially if you are going to use the Ansible scripts, etc. Yeah, and as I said before, it uses the predefined setup, but it's not a closed environment. Although we operate the whole infrastructure, the users, I mean the admins at the NREN side, still have access to the GUI, the administrative access, and to the CLI, so that they may want to configure their own tests, completely independent from what we run in the core, using different test types and parameters. And they may even play with the CLI, get more familiar with the platform. They also learn somehow how to operate those services, because they may do some administrative tasks. They may look at the data, look at the GUI, so that it may be very useful in future deployments or even in usage in their own environment. So that's the current coverage in Europe and a little bit beyond. You can see that we are mostly everywhere in every GÉANT country and GÉANT partners. So that's very nice. And that means that, well, the service has developed a good footprint since it's part of the official portfolio. But we do not stop here, in fact, and we are looking into future, and my few last slides would be devoted to that. We want to find new ways of deployment, new ways of usage, maybe some new features, and one of that is looking at even smaller devices, which could be even easier to place, which could be used by smaller communities to measure some ad hoc networks, like the networks built during the events, conferences, or some small environment. So we were looking, and we currently testing Raspberry Pi 4, which has appeared some time ago and has an interesting feature and very useful for us. It has a 1 gigabit Ethernet copper interface, so that you don't have to use any adapter from USB. It has 4 gigabytes RAM and the micro SD card built in. And yeah, we have a couple of those devices already on our table, and we started testing. Going to distribute some to partners so that they are again plugged into the real networks and become part of the mesh. And in fact, I'm going to present more about that at the second user workshop Antoine has just mentioned. So looking forward to that. Of course, it has some limitations, and as you can see, because it just has a small micro SD card in it, it's preferable that in case you want to store the data, the measurement data, the remote storage is preferred, so some kind of central archive. We did some preliminary tests which are promising. Here is an example of tests from between Estonia and the Raspberry Pi I had in Poznan, running both the bandwidth and latency tests. Here is a graph. You can clearly see when the bandwidth tests were run, because those spikes mean some packet loss on the latency and loss measurements. I was able to generate roughly 800 megabits per second outgoing from Pi, and coming to that about 630 megabits per second. We are going to do more tests back to back, etc., to have some reference measurements and to clearly see how the nodes behave. And with that, we're looking into the future. which mainly depends on you. We have some ideas back in our heads, but in fact, what comes to us from the community creates the service and helps us to improve the service. So, of course, we are going to extend the footprint where possible, either with our own devices distributed in some of the institutions, but also looking forward for your own deployments. And we already assisted in a few nice personal deployments in a few of the NRNs. We're looking into data analysis possibilities. That's the next presentation is about. Because we are able to run IPv4 and IPv6 testing with perfSONAR, that's a nice thing to probably look into. So like we could be able to see some IPv6 coverage tests so that users are able to see the differences, for instance, between the performance of IPv4 and IPv6, or maybe look at the reachability of different sites based on IPv6. So this is one of the ideas. We already run, by the way, IPv6 tests within PMP service. What about some AAI testing? That could be another types of tests implemented into pScheduler, the software components for scheduling tests in perfSONAR. But then what kind of tests? We may want to hear from you, maybe if you have ideas. Cloud testing, that's also a promising area. So we have cloud providers, GÉANT has cloud providers. We would like to know the behavior and the performance of those providers, how they behave. There is potential to do that. So why do we seek on advice from you? Why do we gather in such events? Because we want to know what you think. We are adding new features constantly to the service, but also to underlying software, because the service depends on the software. So there may be new features which we didn't think of, but you may have an idea behind you. Thanks to such discussions and workshop, we can identify where we should improve our products, our services, documentation, all these things related to the service, so that it works better and it is more suited to your environment. Then if we have features, of course, we include them into product roadmaps. And what Antoine has just said about the migration from SMOD to a new storage types is in fact one of the feedbacks we get from the community. Also the new types of tools. We are in a kind of niche with the small nodes. It's quite a unique even in the world, although many people tried with that. Our infrastructure runs as a service at first, so we can enrich that with new thing coming from the community. And yeah, you motivate us with all these ideas, and then we can deliver better service. So that's why we will finish all the sessions with Mentimeter, and we'll give you an opportunity to say a few words to us. So final slide is also for those of you who are already happy users of perfSONAR, or maybe even unhappy, but didn't share your story with us. If you have your success story or stories on how you were using perfSONAR, how it helped you to solve some performance problems, or what you feel missing, or the ways you were trying to use it, please share it with us. That will be an inspiration and also a kind of documentation for us, which we can share with the wider community. And that's it. Thank you. Hope I wasn't too much longer than.
No, Szymon, thank you. Great presentation. Thank you very much. The last presentation is coming from Ljubo Hrboka from Carnet, and he will talk to us about how to use the data that we are gathering with PMP. Actually, because there, as you've been able to see, there are a lot of points throughout Europe which are daily gathering a lot of data. So Ljubo, please share your screen and start your presentation. And unmute.
Yeah, sorry, do you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Good day to everyone. My name is Ljubomir Hrbok. I work for Croatian Academic and Research Network, and this will be a short presentation about a relatively novel approach to network monitoring using machine learning techniques. So something that is still not, let's say, widely available. And after the summary of the performance management platform that you were hearing in a couple of recent presentations before me, I will be talking briefly about the usage of artificial intelligence algorithms for network monitoring and management, and about possible use cases for the performance monitoring platform, and about some of the ongoing work that we are doing now. And at this time, I have to say that the work on this use case has started recently, and that within work package 6, we have set direction on how to proceed with it, but we also wanted to actually use this opportunity to get some feedback and general comments from you about other possible actions and goals that could emerge from this type of work. So you could already hear a lot about perfSONAR and PMP service from Antoine and Shimon before me. So here I will just remind you that almost all of the Europe is covered with the perfSONAR nodes, and they are running network measurements in partial mesh and collecting measurements data on the central server. And that architecture actually looks something like this. There is about 40 small nodes that are executed measurements towards 5 dedicated servers in the GÉANT network, and all the data is being collected to the central server, and the measurements can be scheduled, and there is also, we are developing on-demand measurements applications, so they can be scheduled and run between any of the 2 hosts, not only to these 5 hosts, but between any of them. Measurement data is accessible through MEDDASH dashboard. Now that's the perfSONAR dashboard that the perfSONAR is using. So you get access to the graphs like this one here. This is the example of the latency and packet loss measurement between 2 points as a result of the one-way ping measurement. So you get access to such data, but actually there is a lot of data stored behind. So approximately we have last 7 months of measurement data available. It is not some specially chosen period, it's just a result of the currently available resources. And the data itself is stored in a couple of databases. And time series data, they are stored using a Cassandra database. And the metadata about measurements, they are stored using PostgreSQL. And data is freely accessible through Esmond API. And unfortunately, there are no prepared CSV files or something like that, but one had to get the data by querying, by running multiple HTTP GET requests and follow the Esmond API to get the data about the measurements. So that brings us to the trends in artificial intelligence. So from the, I don't know, today, autonomous vehicles, computer vision, chatboxes, stock trading, everybody is talking about artificial intelligence, and is quickly becoming the vital part of the society. And machine learning is actually the most important technology that is used to analyze this rapidly growing amount of data, and to uncover hidden insights that we didn't even know exist within the data, and we can use those to predict some future trends that are going on. And That brings us to the usage of artificial intelligence and trends in network monitoring and measurement and management. Sorry, the first application of the machine learning techniques, they were seen in traffic classification, especially within intrusion detection systems. So they were using the core property of machine learning algorithms to recognize the patterns, and that were quickly adapted to learn and detect various types of network attacks. And actually, most of the data set that I have found freely available online were those prepared and labeled for training of intrusion detection models. Regarding the network security, other areas that are mentioned in application and scientific literature are detection of service misconfiguration and especially user fingerprinting. For example, today there are various methodologies that allows the detection of, I don't know, network device operating system based solely on the packets flowing through the network. So you record the packet flow and you know which operating system device is running it. Also, with the development of Internet of Things and sensors, network resource management, and generally the e-maintenance has become one of the fastest growing areas in the commercial industry overall. And in networking, there are lots of papers dealing with predictive maintenance and fault detections. Those are obviously some areas of interest. Also, lots of papers are dealing with congestion control optimization, and there are lots of novel adapted TCP mechanisms, and of course, network traffic and routing and classification, traffic prediction, quality of service, and quality of experience is quality of the experience are recent buzzwords, let's say like that. So, what is the case of interest in PMP? Base idea here is to use the large amount of PMP monitoring data and known machine learning techniques to develop a model that can basically detect anomalies in order to detect the issues in the networks. For example, PMP nodes are graphically dispersed and the traffic is going through multi-domain, and analyzing PMP data, monitoring data could help pinpoint the areas in the network that have some ongoing issues. And that can also help with network planning or detecting performance issues during the, I don't know, high data traffics, large part transfers. Actually, the possibilities are endless. So this is one of the area where we would like to hear your suggestions, and we strongly feel that there are lots of possible directions and I don't know, exciting new things that can develop from such a work. Let's get back to data a little. This is a quick two measurement sample, two separate measurements, on-demand latency measurements between two hosts. And they were same host, but measured in different times. And if you look at the latency measurements, anomalies like this, they keep occurring, but they can sometimes, let's say, pass under the radar and go unnoticed because when you get the summary data, you don't notice them. For example, I don't know, here is the median of 29.7 milliseconds, and the bottom one has 29.06 milliseconds. So if you just look at the numbers, you can skip the obvious anomaly that is going on in this picture. I hope this noise is not distracting. Here is a big noise in front of the window, sorry. Unfortunately, the real measurement data that are obtained through PMP are not possible to directly feed into the model. So they are currently saved in different databases, and they are accessible only through API calls, and needs to be collected and merged into appropriate form. So this is just a couple of examples how those data look like. And so we are now getting to challenges, and the main challenges here are first unstructured and scattered data that needs to be prepared. And there is no labeled data available. Labeled data would be nice to have for supervised learning algorithms. And also, I noticed that there are no such data freely available on the internet. There are a couple of projects that were dealing with such kind of data, but those data are behind some paywalls, and maybe it would be nice to create one freely available data set. Adaptation of new algorithms, we are keeping our focus on several candidate algorithms to be used in this work, but we still haven't decided the exact one. And the last, there are many more challenges maybe, but one of the challenges is regarding the nature of inference. And when you have the network with the rapidly changing parameters, and the model needs to be retrained. So if you want to do that in the real time, you may need more powerful resources. Actually, you can do the model on the periodically on the summary data, and that should be easier on the resources. But we will see that when the data are prepared, and that actually brings us to our current work. So unfortunately, as I've said already, we have still no results to show, but currently we are doing data extraction and preparation, and we have decided to use the ELK stack to hold the data, and we are dealing with lots of cleaning and of data, of course, and transformations. And we are also starting to do some exploratory data analysis, but this is just in the beginning phase, so we still have nothing to show. And we are hoping to have some result that can be shown in the next month or so. And after that, we will be able to feed the prepared data into the model and finally get some actual results. I hope I was not long, and I would like to thank you. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Ljubo. The timing was perfect. I hope that you smell the grass now, which was cut in front of your window.
I'm very sorry. Because of that, I don't know if the noise was...
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So I start, before we go, before we jump into the discussion, I suggest that we start with some questions that we prepared for you, and to play a little bit with Menti. So Ljubo, if you can stop sharing, and Ivana, please, can you share the screen now? We would like to go through some questions for you, because we would like to understand your view on some of the things that Ljubo mentioned. And then we will go into discussion. So we didn't forget this. This is a, let's say, a mandatory part of this workshop. So Ivana, please start with the Menti.
Oh, thank you, Pavle. I assume that you can see my screen, right? So if yes, then please go to menti.com, and you can use this code 4619-0590. Excellent, it works, I see. With these questions, we would actually like to hear your view additionally regarding what you heard today. We will ask you about some things that we presented today, and also we'll ask for your feedback related to some more specific topics. So from what I see at the moment, we have 53 participants in the call. So I will try to wait until we have at least, let's say, a bit more than 20 responses. So this first question is, where are you coming from? Are you from NREN? Are you from a university? Are you from some research organization that is not necessarily a university or NREN? Are you maybe coming from a vendor or some other organization that we haven't specified? So if you want to help us, maybe those that have answered others, since we do not have a box that can enable you to write down which exact organization is that, if you want to share this with us in the chat, that would be great. So our next question is related to the services that we presented today. So which of the GÉANT services are either you or your organization using? So we had the perfSONAR, Wi-Fi Mon, PMP that Shimon presented, NMAS that we discussed a lot about in the first session. And we also opened an option if you are not sure if your institution is using any of these. These services that we mentioned here on the slide are all a part of the project that Tim and I are leading, and in particular the exact task of management and the monitoring that Pavle is leading. So in case you would have any additional questions or comments, even when this info share is over, please feel free to contact us and we would be happy to provide more information. So let's move on. Our third question is related to some other measurement platforms or resources that are outside of our project. We have listed just a few, and we do know that RIPE Atlas is very well represented in our community. We know also that some people are using MLab, which is a product that is produced by the company in the United States that is, I believe, a part of Google, and the perfSONAR team collaborates with MLab. But again, if there are some other tools that you would like to share this information with us, please feel free to type it in chat so that we can have this for any later information. The reason why we are asking this question is actually to see if we, as a part of monitoring and management task in our project, should pay more attention to some other tools when we are either designing any of our solutions or working on some future work. So next question is related to the presentation that Ljubo just gave. Are you currently using some of advanced solutions for network monitoring, data analysis, like artificial intelligence or machine learning? We are aware that this is a relatively new topic and that we should all, let's say, dig into as soon as possible as our other operational activities will allow. But we would definitely like to hear from you and collaborate with you, because as Ljubo said, we have recognized some potential use cases, but for any of these use cases, it would be, of course, much bigger interest if any of you would also like to have some specific answers or some specific things that you would like to look at also. Next question is again related to the same topic. So it is about the use cases. Even if you are working on this, or if you are considering working, or even just thinking about it, which use cases look like most prominent to you and you think should be answered or addressed first or at all? So from this question onwards, we will have a few such open answer questions where we would actually like to ask you to type your answers rather than just to offer some predetermined answers that you should choose from. So network security is one area. Yes, we do find this, that it is very important. As you might know, in the GÉANT project, there is a separate project which is marked as Work Package 8 that is dealing with security. So you might as well take a look at some things that they are working on. For example, with the DDoS solution they had, and I believe still have firewall on demand as one solution that can also have a number of a lot of data there. Log analysis, alarm correlation, this is excellent point and maybe something to consider from the presentation that Morten presented today. Incident detection, excellent. Jitter, well, jitter is something that we might look at as well as packet loss and DNS problems on the PnP platform, because these are exactly the measurements that are provided through perfSONAR. Okay, let's move to the next question. So we mentioned the measurements that we currently have in PnP. Are there some additional measurements or some additional capabilities that you would like to see available via the performance measurement platform and that you would either like us to add, or that you would maybe like to add it yourself with or without our help? So anything additional to what we have already. Shimon presented that we have delay measurements, packet loss, bandwidth, throughput, DNS, HTTP, IPv4 and IPv6 measurements of these elements. So if there are something else, please let us know. So cross measurements to other measurement platforms. At the moment, what we do have is perfSONAR to perfSONAR. But for example, we do know that GÉANT is doing some measurements between TWAMP from perfSONAR and TWAMP on Juniper. And this is a presentation that we will have on our perfSONAR workshop, which will be on 14th and 15th of April. Yes, this is a good point. We have to look at PnP first. So let us know if we can help with that. I believe that Shimon has shared the links. If you, and it is definitely listed in the presentations, so you can check afterwards. Next question. With this and a few other questions that will follow, we are asking you if you would like to share the name of your organization, if you are interested in some of the things that we presented today. This first question is related to in-band telemetry that Mauro presented. So if you want to know more, like how the measurements were set up, how it was done, how it was defined, like which parameters were used, how it was fine-tuned, etc., or maybe see some live sessions that something is performed, so that you can see it while it is being done, let us know. It is possible that at the moment, considering that it is not really easy to meet in one place, we will organize something like additional video conferences where we could more share the screen than provide the actual hands-on. But again, we can discuss this in a separate call. So we will check for some of you have also put your names in the while registering, so we can contact you. But if it does not happen, then please feel free to send an email to us. The next question is related to Timemap. This is the solution that Fabio presented about delay and jitter measurements that is currently being performed in GÉANT core network. As Fabio said, we are also looking for potential NRENs that would like to implement such functionality in your network. So if you would like to do this and would like us to engage in some form, please let us know here or in the chat. Also, as Claudio said, that this Timemap is being integrated with the GÉANT measurement system. So it will become one of the functionalities that GÉANT is providing. And then it is yet to be determined if other NRENs will also implement, so that at the end we might create the overall map that will include both GÉANT network and individual NRENs. So thanks for this comment. Let's move to the next question. Argus is a solution that Morten presented to correlate different alarms or alarms received from different systems. So a similar question as before, if you would like to know more or to implement and deploy this in your organization, please let us know. Argus is currently, again, as Morten said, being developed as a part of a work package 6, but at some point of time we will perform the analysis of the interest of different NRENs. At the moment we know that Uninet is doing this, SUNET, because the SUNET is also using NAV, the tool produced by Uninet. So we are also considering if there are some other NRENs that would like to use Argus. The next question is about sharing the data and analyzing the data, like the so-called big data or large-scale monitoring data. Mauro mentioned that in his call. It was also a topic of performance and data management workshop that we had, a telemetry workshop that we had in November last year. So we are aware that this is a big topic, and I also know that Alex, hi Alex from RNP is here. I would like to mention that actually Alex initiated this to be both for last TNC, and from that moment on we started also to look much more at the data sharing topic in the community. So we also plan to continue with this based on the very big interest that we had in November last year. So next question is the last one. So if we forgot to ask you anything during this Menti, please feel free to ask now, and I will open it, but keep it open, but we'll stop sharing so that we can actually start the discussion. So back to you, Pavle, and many thanks everyone for all of your comments.
Thank you, Ivana, and thank to everybody who contributed to this Menti. So I think that I saw Professor Magdalis wanted to make a comment before we started this Menti. Professor, are you still around? Would you like to ask some question? Or?
Yes, I mean, I was very much intrigued by the last presentation on machine learning. And since we've been doing quite a lot of work on that, and our main problem was the lack of available data, especially labeled data. And the question that I might ask, I mean, my colleague from Croatia is whether, or the NREN community in general, whether they would conceive ordering some attacks just, you know, for monitoring and getting database data sets for training of, you know, to classify attacks and to classify attack data and so forth.
If I may answer, we are currently not dealing with the traffic data, we are dealing with the monitoring data. So That's a different type of data, but I don't know if anyone in the community has some prepared traffic data, because we are dealing with the monitoring data and we will label the monitoring data. So there are no actual flows of packets there.
So if I may comment, so as Ljubo said, our focus was on PMP data because it is, let's say, GDPR free. So this was machine to machine completely within our system. So, and the purpose was really to analyze this data. This topic of using the traffic data for security purposes every once in a while comes in some of our discussions within the project. And so far, the result or the final conclusion was that NREN, within NREN, might use it for their own purposes, but that for now, apart from those as considered well known, I do not have any links out of my pocket to share, but there are some sets of data that security teams are usually using when they're doing some analysis. So at the GÉANT project level, as far as I know, we have not started to create some data that might be used for others to perform some analysis over some real production data. And the main reason for this is security, because we do not want to reveal personal data of that might be found in the traffic.
Thank you, Ivana. Do we have any other question from the audience for our presenters in the second or even in the first part of?
I have an immediate comment to Menti, if I may.
Okay, yes, of course.
I think that was the second question about what type of tools you are using in your domain. Yeah, I'm correct. So there was a group of answers who don't know if they use any of the tools. So that made me thinking that if you are here and you feel not informed enough, please get back to us afterwards. We can provide you more information for sure, and even a kind of tailored presentations if you have any internal events within your organization or your NRNs where we may present the services you may, you want to hear about. That was my comment.
Thank you, Shimon. Simon,
Yeah, just on this part, sorry for the noise. I think there are some people who voted I don't know, because there was no option to say I know that we don't use any of these services. So it's not necessarily ignorance.
Okay, thanks, Simon.
Excellent point, Sam.
I see.
I have a question for
Yes.
Simon. I see that the development of perfSONAR is a long process, and it is very interesting that not as other programs of such scale or maybe more, they are not so OS specific. And perfSONAR, you are giving instructions OS by OS. So why it is so just for your program?
Thank you again. I will allow Antoine to answer that question. Antoine, may you comment on that?
I'm not sure I understood the question actually. So
I mean that for today you are talking that you can install it under CentOS 7. Very good. But what was like in 6 or whatever? It looks like on every new version you should format your hard drive and install it from the scratch. Is it
no,
what you want?
That's not supposed to be that way. That was the case when moving from CentOS 6 to CentOS 7. So the earlier version of perfSONAR were running on CentOS 6, and there is no upgrade path from CentOS 6 to CentOS 7. If you're running it on CentOS 7, you can upgrade the perfSONAR version that you're using. Unfortunately, you will not be able to upgrade to anything later than CentOS 7. So, but that's dependent on CentOS. If you were running perfSONAR on Debian or Ubuntu, then you can upgrade both your perfSONAR and your OS to a newer version. But you might want to do that, or actually that might not be the best way of maintaining your perfSONAR installation in the long run. That's also why we provided those Sensible roles and Ansible playbook as an easy way to reinstall a perfSONAR measurement point from scratch and to establish a new measurement host anywhere on your network. So what's important with perfSONAR, I think it's retaining some data, some historical data, but as well, you're probably not interested in historical data from years ago, but only probably from weeks or months ago to see the performance trends. But if you want to do capacity planning, I'm not sure you will be using perfSONAR data to do that. So, and even in that case, that's what's important, is to keep your central measurement archive available and the data in this archive available, so your perfSONAR measurement point can be reinstalled. So that's one way I would suggest to look at perfSONAR measurement point deployment nowadays as piece of software, as infrastructure that you can deploy now and then scrape and deploy again in a few months or in a year. The measurement point itself is not holding anything that cannot be erased and reconfigured easily. So you should be able to do that. And that would help you also manage your OS or patching your OS in the long run.
Am I right that when you are modifying your project, your perfSONAR, you change the format of the database? Now it is completely different. Am I correct?
No, I'm not sure to what you're referring to. So the format of the database up to now and even previous version 3 of perfSONAR is still the same. So it's still the YesMond database that we're using for some years now, 5 or more years. So this hasn't changed.
So
So we will be changing it with version 5 when we will be moving to the default backend being Elasticsearch. But even then, we will provide well, some migration path for that. Maybe not for the data, but for any application that would be using the perfSONAR API.
I remember how was the transition from the other database format in NTOP. If you know, they changed from MySQL to new database. I don't remember what is the name.
So you're talking some years ago when the perfSONAR was developed at 2 different places. I mean, at GÉANT, and there was a European and a US version.
Yeah, I
guess you're talking back in the times of 2015 or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, well, so there was a decision, and we needed to combine the effort, and kind of to converge also the versions, because actually we were working with the same software, but storing in different databases, and that was also not helpful for the community, because otherwise they would have to support the two versions. So yes, indeed, it was really a hassle to move from that database to the other. But also, to your question with why we now support only CentOS 7, you certainly understand that supporting different operating systems requires more and more effort in terms of patching and supporting different libraries, which actually is, our team is not that big to support all of the versions. So that's why we also drop off the support for this or another version operating system that is going to be outdated and even not supported by perfSONAR. I mean, CentOS 6.
That is just what I wanted to hear about libraries and updates. Yes, it depends on the operating system very
Yes, but you certainly understand that it's an effort to support, and we are struggling a lot. And actually, Antoine can tell, because he's engaged a lot into this with supporting different versions of PostgreSQL for between the different Debian versions that we are supporting. So. It is a struggle, and we are trying to do our best with the effort that we have, and to support as be as flexible as we are.
I just wanted to shortly comment on that. I think Eugene's question is very valid, and if you look, in fact, from the perspective of an organization who runs services of any kind in any application on any of the operating system, you as an organization, you usually try to be coherent and up to date with the system versions. So you don't want to run your apps based on the system version, which is end of support or even end of life, which happened with CentOS 6. So if you run any other type of application, you will anyway end up with an issue of upgrading the system to some kind of latest operating system. So in that term, there is no difference between whether you run perfSONAR instance or you run whatever application you use. So, but yeah, that's a good point, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shimon. Do we have any other question from the audience? Well, if not, I have one question for Fabio. So we've heard that perfSONAR is considering moving towards the ELK. We also saw that Wi-Fi Mon is using ELK. But on the other side, we heard from your presentation that you found the ELK, I think that I will quote you properly, cumbersome when it comes to a lot of data that is being processed. Can you please be a bit more specific about this? So what are exactly the problems that you found, and is it the type of data? Please, if you can make a comment.
Yeah, sure. We had issue with the resource consumption. I mean, if we decided to keep the footprint of the whole service as small as possible, so we decided to be a single machine. This means that in principle, this is not the best environment for Elasticsearch, because an Elasticsearch by default requires a cluster of at least 3 nodes. And this means that we had to mimic a cluster by using 3 Docker containers. But with the virtual machine we had, we noticed that, first of all, RAM was an issue. We had 4 gig of RAM, and with queries that involved periods longer than a few weeks, we start getting a lot of timeouts and errors. And once the data started to pile up, we also had the issue in fetching even smaller time ranges. In general, Elasticsearch suffers when you have a very long data collection in terms of more than 5 or 6 months. In general, this is something that we also have seen in GAR with a 5 nodes cluster, because by default, Elasticsearch keeps all the shards of your data sets open and in memory. And this means that you need a lot of resources. So indeed, my answer is that it really depends on how long data retention you need. If you need to keep weeks, Elasticsearch is perfect. If you plan to keep years of data, Elasticsearch starts to struggle.
But Fabio, you're talking about periods of time.
Yeah.
And you know, if I'm collecting only one metric, only between 2 servers, I can perhaps keep 10 years. But so can you kind of express your concerns in terms of gigabytes, you know, of data? So because this we can also kind of evaluate, even on our side, we are also looking into, you know, moving perfSONAR there. And do you have this, you know, measure?
Yeah, for getting data with RPM from all the GÉANT routers for 7 or 8 months, we consumed 20 gig of disk space. And that the main concern was not the storage itself, because it's not a huge amount of data in the end. But it was indeed the RAM. The RAM consumption was the usage of the RAM was the thing that caused more issues in the user experience.
So you're saying with the 20 gigabytes in the archive or in the database, you're seeing delays and even timeouts in
many
processing
timeouts.
data.
Exactly. Because our design goal was, as I said, running everything on a single host. So also Kibana was running as a Docker container on the same machine. And this is definitely not the best option. I mean, in GAR, we avoided this issue by using, for example, a Kubernetes cluster with 15 nodes, so no huge issues in handling the data. But if you set yourself under a rules of engagement where you want to minimize everything, probably the way Elasticsearch and Kibana operate could become some critical elements in terms of tuning.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. We are approaching 5 p.m. Central European time. Maybe we have time for one last question, and then we can end this workshop. Okay, if there are no other questions, so thank you all very much for participating at this workshop. I will now try to convert those video files, and I hope that this will be seen on YouTube as well. So thank you again. You will be informed about the video once it's ready, and of course all the presentations are already on the event page, so you can access them, and you can contact any of the presenters if you found some of the presentations useful and interesting. So thank you all, and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye.